Raymond Foster's hands trembled as he clutched the rejection letter, his worn jacket hanging loose on his shoulders. The HR manager had barely looked at him, just saw the frayed collar, the self-taught coding skills, the absence of a degree. Failed. The glass doors of Sterling Tech reflected a man walking away from his last chance, each step heavier than the one before. But then came the sound, heels clicking rapidly against marble, getting closer. A woman's voice, breathless and urgent, called out his name. The CEO herself was running after him. Why would Catherine Reed, the most powerful woman in tech, chase down a failed applicant? What had she seen in that waiting room? Something he'd done without thinking, a moment so small he'd already forgotten it, that made her believe he was worth fighting for. And what would happen when the man who rejected him discovered his boss had just... Raymond woke before dawn, his mind already racing through code sequences and interview questions. In the next room, 7-year-old Chloe slept peacefully beneath her faded blanket. For 2 years, he had taught himself to code every night after she went to bed, the laptop on their wobbly kitchen table his gateway to something bigger. Today was the interview at Sterling Tech that could change everything. He made cheap instant coffee and stared at his thrift store shirt hanging on the bathroom door. The jacket was too big now, bought when he had weighed more, before single parenthood had whittled him down to wire and worry. Chloe's mother had left when she was 3. Big day today, Daddy. Chloe padded into the kitchen, climbing into her chair. Raymond poured generic cereal and milk, trying to hide his nervousness. Big day, he confirmed. She handed him a crayon drawing, 2 stick figures in front of a building with many windows. Daddy at work was written across the top in careful letters. He folded it into his jacket pocket, throat tight. Mrs. Patterson arrived at 7 to watch Chloe until the school bus came. Raymond kissed his daughter goodbye, her small arms fierce around his neck, and headed out to catch the bus to Sterling Tech's headquarters rose 30 stories, all glass and steel. The marble lobby echoed with confident footsteps. Raymond felt immediately out of place in his worn jacket among people in tailored suits. He took the elevator to the 11th floor, clutching his portfolio of printed code samples and projects, proof that absence of a degree did not mean absence of skill. 3 other candidates waited in the reception area, younger and more relaxed than Raymond. His hands were sweating. He wiped them on his pants and pretended to review his portfolio while his heart hammered. He could do this. His code was clean, efficient, creative. The work mattered, not the credentials. By 10:15, he was the last one waiting. That was when he noticed the laptop on the chair across from him. Expensive, sleek, with a sticker showing a name and phone number. Someone had left it behind. Raymond could have kept it, used it as an advantage. His own second-hand laptop was barely functional. But he thought about losing everything he had worked for and walked the laptop to the receptionist. "Excuse me, someone left this here." Raymond handed the laptop to the receptionist, not knowing that Catherine Reed, CEO of Sterling Tech, had been watching from the hallway. She had paused when she saw him examining the device, curious what he would do. When he returned it instead of keeping it, something in her chest tightened with recognition. Catherine had built Sterling Tech from a garage startup while raising her son alone. She knew what it meant to be underestimated, and she had just seen this man in the worn jacket choose integrity over advantage. Paul Hendricks, head of human resources, called Raymond into the interview room. He looked at Raymond with barely concealed dismissal, taking in the frayed collar and nervous posture. The interview was brutal. Paul flipped through Raymond's portfolio without really looking, his condescension thick enough to choke on. No formal education, no boot camp certificate, just YouTube tutorials? Paul's voice dripped with contempt. Raymond tried to explain his 300 hours of coursework, his open-source contributions, the web application he had built for a non-profit. Paul pushed the portfolio back across the table. We need someone with proven credentials. Someone who fits our company culture. I'm sure you understand. Raymond understood perfectly. Paul was looking at his worn jacket and seeing someone who did not belong. The rejection letter was handed to him at reception. Raymond folded it carefully, put it in his jacket pocket next to Chloe's drawing, and walked toward the glass doors. He had failed. Each step felt heavier than the last. Behind him, inside the building, he heard a sound that did not make sense. Heels clicking rapidly against marble, moving fast, getting closer. A woman's voice, breathless and urgent, called out a name. Raymond turned around. Catherine Reed was running toward him, her perfectly tailored suit jacket flying open, her expression intense and determined. The CEO of Sterling Tech, the woman whose face was on magazine covers and conference stages, was running after him. She reached him, slightly out of breath, and held up one hand as if asking him to wait. "Raymond Foster?" She said his name like it mattered. "I'm Catherine Reed." Raymond stared at her, unable to process what was happening. People were walking past them on the sidewalk, the city moving around them in its usual indifferent rush. But all he could see was this woman standing in front of him with fire in her eyes. She was not looking at him the way Paul had looked at him. She was looking at him like he was someone worth seeing. "I saw what you did in the waiting room," Catherine said, her voice still catching her breath. "With the laptop. You could have kept it, could have used it, could have just walked away. But you didn't. You returned it." She paused, studying his face. "That tells me more about who you are than any resume ever could." Raymond's mind was spinning. "I don't understand. Mr. Hendricks just rejected my application." Catherine's expression hardened. "Paul Hendricks makes hiring decisions based on credentials and appearances. I make them based on character." She straightened her jacket, her CEO composure returning. "I want to offer you something. A 30-day trial period. No salary for the first 2 weeks, but if you prove yourself, you'll be hired full-time with benefits." The words did not make sense. Raymond felt like he was in a dream, the kind that would dissolve the moment he tried to hold on to it. "No salary? I know it's not ideal." Catherine's voice softened slightly. "But I need you to prove to my team what I already believe, that you can do this work. 2 weeks is all I'm asking. If you're half as good at coding as you are at doing the right thing, you'll earn your place here." Raymond thought about Chloe, about the bills piling up on the kitchen table, about the impossibility of working for 2 weeks without income. He thought about the drawing in his pocket, the stick figures standing in front of the building with lots of windows. He thought about hope, dangerous and necessary as oxygen. "I'll do it," he said. Catherine smiled, and it transformed her face from intimidating to warm. "Good. Start Monday. Report directly to me, not to HR." She pulled out a business card and handed it to him. "Welcome to Sterling Tech, Raymond." She turned and walked back into the building, leaving Raymond standing on the sidewalk, holding a business card, and wondering if the world had just tilted on its axis. His hands were shaking again, but this time not from fear. This time from the terrifying possibility that things might actually change. The weekend passed in anxious preparation. Mrs. Patterson insisted on watching Chloe every morning. Raymond told his daughter about the new job, but not about the 2 weeks without salary, about stretching their already thin resources to breaking point. Some burdens were not meant for 7-year-old shoulders. Monday morning, Catherine met him in her executive suite. "Paul Hendricks is not happy about this. Your work will be scrutinized more than anyone else's." "I understand," Raymond said steadily. She assigned him to the development team under Christine Walsh, a sharp-eyed woman with obvious skepticism. His desk was isolated in a corner, his old laptop pathetic next to the sleek monitors around him. He could feel eyes on him, hear whispered conversations. The charity case, the CEO's project. Raymond dove into the code base. Complex, professional work. But as he read, understanding bloomed. By lunch, he had notes on improvements. By end of day, he had written his first contribution, a small optimization. He submitted it and went home exhausted but exhilarated. The next morning, his code was rejected. Harsh comments. Inefficient logic. Doesn't follow style guide. Raymond revised, submitted again. Rejected again with even harsher feedback. He stayed 2 hours late, perfecting every line. The third submission was approved, but with minimal acknowledgement and silence from the team. 2 weeks of grueling work followed. Raymond arrived before anyone else, stayed until the cleaning crew arrived. He took on tasks others avoided, legacy code that no one wanted to touch, documentation that had been neglected for months, bugs that had been deemed too minor to fix. His code accumulated steadily, solid and undeniable work that even the isolation remained sharp and painful. The team went to lunch together without inviting him. They had inside jokes he was not part of, shared experiences from years of working together. In meetings, when Raymond offered suggestions, they were met with polite but skeptical silence. When others proposed identical ideas minutes later, those same suggestions received enthusiastic discussion and immediate implementation. Raymond watched this happen again and again, learning to swallow, but slowly, almost imperceptibly, things began to shift. A junior developer came to him privately with a question about database optimization. Raymond spent an hour explaining his approach, showing her techniques he had learned through trial and error. The next day, she brought a colleague, then another. Soon, Raymond had an informal mentorship circle happening during lunch breaks, people who were willing to learn from him even if they were not ready to socialize with. His code continued to flow through the review system. Each submission was scrutinized with microscopic attention, but Raymond learned to anticipate the feedback, to write code that was not just functional but elegant, not just correct but maintainable. He studied the company style guide until he could recite it, absorbed the patterns and conventions until they became second nature. His third week, one of his optimizations was flagged as exemplary in the team's weekly review. No one congratulated him directly, but he noticed people looking at. Catherine called him into her office on Monday of week 3. She was standing by the window overlooking the city, and when she turned, there was pride in her expression. "Christine says your code is excellent, and you're the hardest worker on the team. She also said you've been helping the junior developers during lunch, and they're learning more from you in a week than they learned in a month of formal training." Catherine walked to her desk and pulled out an envelope. "Full-time position, full benefits, $75,000 a year. You've earned it." Raymond took the envelope with shaking hands. $75,000. It was more money than he had ever imagined earning in a year. It meant health insurance for Chloe, meant she could join activities without him calculating the cost, meant he could stop lying awake at night, doing math in his head about whether they could afford groceries and rent. It was security, tangible and real, the kind he had only dreamed about during those long nights of teaching himself to code while the rest of the world slept. "Thank you." The words felt inadequate. Catherine shook her head. "Don't thank me. You did this. Every line of code, every late night, every moment you chose to help someone else instead of protecting your position. You proved you belong here. You proved my judgment was right." She paused, and something in her expression shifted to something warmer, more personal. "You remind me why I started this company, why I believed talent could come from anywhere if we were just willing." There was something in her voice, in the way she was looking at him, that went beyond professional approval. Raymond felt it like a current in the air between them, something unspoken but undeniable. But he was not sure if he was reading it correctly, if the woman who had saved his career could possibly see him as more than a project to prove a point. He pushed the thought away, needing this job too much to complicate it with impossible hopes. The salary transformed their lives in ways Raymond had not dared to imagine. He signed a lease on a 2-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood with trees lining the streets and playgrounds where parents watched their children without the haunted look of people stretched too thin. Chloe got her own room for the first time in her life. He bought her a bed shaped like a castle, and when she saw it, she cried with happiness so pure it made his chest ache. He bought himself 3 professional outfits that fit properly, and the first time he wore one to work, Christine stopped mid-sentence and said, "You look like you belong here now." It was the first genuinely kind thing she had said to him, and he realized with work became a rhythm he could follow. Raymond discovered that his self-taught perspective, the one that had been used against him in the interview, was actually his greatest asset. He approached problems from angles that formerly trained developers did not consider. He saw patterns in chaos because he had learned to find structure in the scattered resources of online education. He solved problems that had stumped the team for weeks, not because he was smarter, but because he thought differently. One of his solutions, a caching mechanism that reduced database queries by 40%, became a case study used in training new developers. Slowly, grudgingly, the team began to accept him. People sought his input in code reviews. They included him in technical discussions. Christine started assigning him increasingly complex tasks, trusting him with critical components. But acceptance in the team room did not extend to acceptance everywhere. Paul Hendricks had not forgotten, and he had not forgiven. He appeared in the development office periodically, his eyes always finding Raymond, his expression always calculating. He questioned Raymond's work in meetings, asked pointed questions designed to make him stumble. He reminded people, in ways both subtle and overt, that Raymond was Catherine's personal project, implying that his position was charity rather than merit earned. Raymond absorbed it all, channeling his frustration into his code. He had learned long ago that the best response to contempt was excellent work that could not be dismissed or explained away. But the tension was always there, simmering beneath the surface, waiting for the right spark to ignite it. That spark came 3 months into his employment. Sterling Tech had landed a major client, a financial services company that needed a custom trading platform. The contract was worth millions, the kind of money that defined quarterly earnings and determined bonuses across the company. The development team had been working on it for weeks, and Raymond had been assigned to handle the transaction processing system, the heart that would pump data through the entire platform. He had built it carefully, methodically, testing every edge case he could imagine. The system was elegant in its efficiency, capable of handling thousands of transactions per second without breaking a sweat. He was genuinely proud of it, proud of the way he had solved problems that would have required twice as much code from someone else, proud of how the pieces fit together like a puzzle completing itself. The deadline was approaching, and everything appeared to be on track. Until the client ran their stress test. The system did not just slow down or glitch, it crashed completely, catastrophically, taking the entire demo platform down with it. The client was furious, threatening to cancel the contract. The project manager was in full panic mode. And Paul Hendricks called an emergency meeting in the main conference room, his expression grim with barely concealed satisfaction, making sure everyone understood that this failure would have consequences. Raymond sat in that conference room feeling the walls close in around him. His system had failed. His code, which he had been so proud of, which he had spent weeks perfecting, had crumbled under real-world pressure like a sandcastle in a storm. Around the table, people were discussing what went wrong, throwing around technical terms and theories. But Raymond saw the looks they were giving him, the accusation, the vindication in some eyes, that suggested that they had known all along this would happen. The self-taught guy had finally proven what Paul had been saying from the beginning. He was not good enough for this level of work, not ready for the big leap. Paul stood at the head of the table, arms crossed, expression carved from stone. We need to identify the root cause and fix it within 48 hours, or we lose this client. His eyes found Raymond with laser precision, which means everyone works through the weekend. No exceptions, no excuses. The meeting dispersed with the grim energy of soldiers heading into battle they knew might be unwinnable. Raymond returned to his desk and pulled up his code, searching for the flaw he had somehow missed despite all his testing. The error logs showed a cascade failure in the transaction handler, but he could not find the trigger point. He read through every line, traced every function call, checked every variable and every condition. Nothing stood out. The code looked correct. It showed hours blurred together. The office emptied as evening turned to night, people heading home to their families and their comfortable lives. But Raymond stayed, surviving on coffee that tasted like battery acid and determination that felt like it might burn him from the inside out. His eyes burned from staring at the screen. His back ached from hunching over the keyboard. But he could not stop, could not go home, could not face Chloe knowing that he had failed at the one thing that was supposed to prove he belonged. Around 8, Christine stopped by his desk. She looked exhausted, her usually perfect hair disheveled, her eyes red-rimmed. Go home. Get some sleep. We'll figure this out tomorrow with fresh eyes. I can't! Raymond's voice came out hoarse, rough from lack of use. This is my code, my responsibility. If I can't fix it, who will? Christine hesitated, studying his face. She saw something there. The desperation, the fear, the absolute refusal to give up that made her decision for her. She pulled up a chair and sat down next to him. Then let me look at it with you. 2 sets of eyes are better than one. Together they went through the system again. Christine asked questions that helped Raymond see his own work from different angles, pointed out assumptions he had made that might not hold under stress. But even working together, the bug remained elusive, hiding somewhere in the thousands of lines of code like a ghost that disappeared whenever you looked directly at it. The clock on Raymond's computer showed 11:30, then midnight, then 12:30. Chloe would be asleep by now, safe at home with Mrs. Patterson watching over her. Raymond hoped she had not waited up for him, had not spent the evening worrying about why Daddy was so late. Catherine appeared around midnight with coffee. Show me what you've tried. Raymond explained his debugging process. Catherine listened, her sharp mind processing. Then she leaned forward, pointing. This function calls the database directly. Are you handling connection pooling? Raymond's heart stopped. Connection pooling? He had assumed it was automatic. Under heavy load, too many connections would overwhelm the database. There, a simple setting. Catastrophic consequences. That's it, I can fix this. He worked quickly, modifying the code, adding safeguards. Christine and Catherine stayed, offering suggestions, mostly just present. By 3 in the morning, he had the fix. He tested it relentlessly. It held. Deploy to staging, Catherine said. We'll test first thing in the morning. Her hand touched his shoulder briefly. Go home. Get some sleep. You've done good work tonight. Her touch lingered. Raymond looked up at her, and for a moment they were not CEO and employee, but 2 people who had stayed up solving a problem together, who understood responsibility and determination. Thank you. Thank me by getting this client signed. She smiled, and something warm passed between them. The morning stress test ran flawlessly. 500 transactions per second, the platform held steady. The room erupted in applause. Christine clapped Raymond's shoulder warmly. For the first time, he felt like part of the team. He had not just fixed a bug, he had proven himself under impossible pressure. Catherine watched from the back, nodding at him across the space, but Paul's expression was pure frustration. He had wanted Raymond to fail. The client signed that afternoon. Raymond's reputation shifted from questionable newcomer to valued team member almost overnight. People sought his input on complex problems, included him in design discussions, invited him to lunch at the Thai place, 2 blocks over, where the developers always gathered. The isolation that had defined his first months evaporated, replaced by something that felt surprisingly like belonging. He had earned his place, but his relationship with Catherine grew more complicated in ways he had not anticipated. She found reasons to work with him directly more frequently, pulling him into strategic meetings where his technical expertise was valuable, but his junior status made his presence unusual. She asked his opinion on product directions, on hiring decisions, on company culture. They fell into a rhythm of collaboration that felt natural and effortless, like 2 parts of a system that had been designed to work together, but had only just discovered each other. The moments accumulated, small but significant. A meeting that ran until the office lights automatically shut off, the 2 of them working through a technical problem in the semi-darkness, their voices quiet in the empty building. Her hand on his arm when she made a point, the touch lasting just a fraction of a second longer than strictly professional contact required. The way her face lit up when he walked into a room, like his presence genuinely pleased her rather than being just another obligation in her packed schedule. The way he found himself looking for her in crowds, feeling more centered when he knew she was. Raymond told himself he was imagining it, reading meaning into coincidence and normal professional interactions. The CEO of Sterling Tech could not possibly be interested in him. A single father who had been unemployed 3 months ago, who still felt like an imposter every time he walked through the glass doors. The gap between them was too wide, the complications too numerous. She was his boss, his benefactor, the person who had saved him from disaster. Getting involved with her would be messy and potentially catastrophic. It could undermine everything he had worked for, make people think his success was about personal connections rather than actual, but he could not stop thinking about her, about the way her mind worked, sharp and creative and fundamentally kind, always looking for the solution that helped the most people rather than the solution that was easiest or most profitable. About the way she listened when he talked, really listened with her full attention, like his thoughts mattered as much as anyone else's in the company. About the night they had stayed up together fixing the bug, the comfortable silence between them as they worked, the sense of connection that felt less like falling in love and more like coming home to something he had been searching for without knowing it existed. Months passed like pages turning in a book. Raymond continued to excel, his contributions becoming integral to Sterling Tech's operations. He was promoted to senior developer and given his own small team to lead. The apartment he shared with Chloe became a real home, filled with furniture that was not second-hand and food that was not generic brand. Chloe thrived, joining the school choir and making friends who had birthday parties at places with admission fees. Raymond's life had transformed in ways he had not dared to hope for during those dark nights of self-teaching, and at the center of it all was the woman who had run after him on the sidewalk. Catherine initiated more personal conversations, asking about Chloe's interests and fears, sharing stories about her own son who was away at college, studying architecture. She admitted that single parenthood had been the hardest thing she had ever done. Harder than building a billion-dollar company from scratch, harder than surviving in a male-dominated industry. Raymond found himself opening up to her in ways he rarely allowed himself, talking about the fear that kept him awake at night, the exhaustion that was both physical and emotional, the overwhelming love that made all the struggle worthwhile. They understood each other in ways that went beyond work, connected by shared experiences that had shaped them both into who they were. 6 months in, Catherine confronted Paul in front of the executive team. She had discovered he had been systematically blocking promotions based on school names, auto-rejecting state university graduates regardless of skill. Catherine presented damning evidence, pointed to Raymond as proof of what they gained by looking past credentials. Paul was moved to consulting with no hiring authority. When Raymond heard about it from Christine, she added knowingly, "She cares about you." Raymond did not know what to say. He had felt the shift, but was afraid acknowledging it would complicate everything he had worked for. But he could not stop thinking about Catherine, her mind, her kindness, the way she listened, the way that night fixing the bug had felt like coming home. The company's family day changed everything. Chloe ran around the playground, flushed with happiness. Catherine appeared beside Raymond as they watched their daughters play. "She's beautiful. You've done an incredible job with her." Chloe ran over, dragging Sophie, Catherine's daughter, behind her. "Daddy, this is my new friend." The two girls were already making plans. Raymond and Catherine exchanged glances, recognizing possibility and hope in the easy friendship form. "They get along well," Catherine observed carefully. "Would you and Chloe like to come for dinner sometime? Just the 4 of us?" It was an invitation that meant more than dinner. Raymond could maintain safe boundaries or open the door to something terrifying and exhilarating. "We'd love to." 2 weeks later, at Catherine's house, they cooked together while Sophie and Chloe disappeared into play. They talked about everything: childhoods, dreams, the terror and thrill of single parenthood. After dinner, on the back porch watching sunset, I was afraid of complicating things, of what people would think, of ruining what we have professionally, she said softly. But I realized I was more afraid of not trying at all. I care about you, Raymond, not just as an employee, but as someone I want in my life. I care about you too, Raymond managed. More than I probably should, considering you're my boss. Catherine laughed. HR will have fun with the disclosure forms, but I built this company on choosing people for who they are. I meant that when I hired you. I mean it now. I choose you, Raymond, if you'll have me. When their lips met, gentle and sweet, it felt like the beginning of hope he had stopped believing in. From inside, Chloe and Sophie laughed at their movie. It was the sound of pure happiness. The following months were careful and considerate. They disclosed their relationship to HR, navigated company policies with transparency. Some gossiped, but Raymond's work spoke for itself. He continued excelling, leading his team, mentoring developers from non-traditional backgrounds. Catherine launched the Second Chance Hiring Initiative. Raymond became its face, proof that talent could come from anywhere. He led training programs for people like him, foster care kids, displaced workers, anyone hungry to prove themselves. Of the first 20, 18 secured positions. The 2 others started freelance businesses. Media attention followed. Raymond gave interviews, told his story repeatedly. Understanding each appearance changed minds about who belonged in tech. Other companies started similar programs. He spoke at conferences, consulted with organizations. He was becoming influential, the face of a movement. A year after that first dinner, Raymond and Catherine stood together at Sterling Tech's lobby on a Saturday. They had brought the girls to see the new Second Chance hiring office. On the wall, a plaque read, "Talent has no prerequisites, potential has no pedigree, opportunity should have no barriers." Raymond had written it. "Daddy, did you help make this?" Chloe asked, eyes shining. "I did. This is for people like me, who work hard but didn't have the same chances. We're going to help them get jobs." The 4 of them hugged together in that office, representing everything they believed in. They were a family, not traditional, but real, built on respect, shared values, and courage to take chances on people who deserved them. That evening, after dropping the girls at Sophie's grandmother's for a sleepover, they sat by Catherine's fireplace. Nearly a year since that cold morning with the rejection letter. Everything had changed. "What are you thinking about?" Catherine asked. "About how close I came to giving up. If you hadn't run after me, I don't know what would have happened." "You would have found another way. You're not the kind of person who gives up, maybe. But I'm glad I didn't have to find out." Catherine sat up, eyes bright. "The board approved my proposal this week. Sterling Tech is partnering with community colleges and coding boot camps. Scholarships, internships, guaranteed interviews. If we do it right, we'll reach thousands over 5 years. And you're going to help me lead it." "That's incredible," Raymond said, overwhelmed. "I don't know if I'm qualified for something that big." Neither was I when I started Sterling Tech in my garage. We figured it out. And you will too. We're partners, remember? Partners in vision, in values, in the work of making the world more just. Raymond thought about all the people like him who deserved real chances. "Okay, let's do it. Let's do..." A week later, Raymond got an unexpected call from Paul Hendricks. "I want to apologize," Paul said, voice subdued, "for how I treated you. I was wrong. I've spent 2 years watching you prove me wrong repeatedly. What you and Catherine are doing made me rethink everything. I've been volunteering with a workforce development non-profit, trying to do better." Raymond was stunned. He could hold on to anger or offer forgiveness. "I appreciate that, Paul. Thank you. And I'm glad you're working to do better." After they hung up, Raymond sat thinking about how people could change, could grow beyond their worst impulses. Catherine found him. "People can surprise you," she said when he told her. Sometime 2 years after the first interview, Sterling Tech celebrated the Second Chance Hiring Program's 500th graduate. The convention center was packed with every cohort. Raymond stood on stage with Catherine, looking at faces of people given opportunities they would not have had otherwise. Graduates shared stories. A single mother who had worked 3 minimum-wage jobs, now a senior developer. A formerly incarcerated man who taught himself coding in prison, now leading security audits. A young woman from a rural town, now working on AI projects. Each different, all sharing the core, people overlooked who fought their way into opportunities and proved they belonged. Raymond announced the Second Chance Coalition, Sterling Tech partnering with 20 tech companies for a unified pipeline. Free training, guaranteed interviews, support systems. "We're committing to hire 10,000 people through this program over 5 years." The applause was overwhelming. Catherine joined him at the microphone. "We're doing this because Raymond taught us that everyone deserves a chance to prove themselves. He showed us character matters more than credentials. Because of him, because of all of you, the tech industry is becoming more inclusive and fair." Driving home, exhausted but exhilarated, they collapsed on the couch. "We did it," Raymond said softly. "You did it," Catherine corrected. "I just gave you the opportunity. I couldn't have done any of this without you. You gave me a chance to become who I was supposed to be. And you reminded me what matters." Catherine pulled a box from her desk. Inside was an old-fashioned skeleton key on a silver chain. "It's symbolic. You opened doors for yourself through hard work. But I want to open new doors with you. Build a life where we both have keys to everything that matters. So I'm asking, will you marry me?" Raymond's breath caught. "Yes. Absolutely yes." She slipped the keychain around his neck, and he pulled her close, kissing her with all the love and gratitude he felt. They had come so far from that first day when she chased him down. They had built a life, a family, a movement, and now they were promising to continue building together. Later, lying beside sleeping Catherine, Raymond thought about everyone who had told him he was not good enough. He had come so close to believing them. But Catherine had seen past all that, given him a chance to prove what he already was. In return, he had shown her, and himself, that potential was not about where you came from, but where you were willing to go. He thought about Chloe sleeping down the hall, growing up in a world where her father was respected, where she could dream without limitations. He had broken the cycle, created opportunities that would ripple into the future. The key around his neck caught moonlight. Catherine had called it symbolic, and she was right. It represented doors opening, locked paths becoming accessible, rejection not being the end of. Raymond Foster had walked away from Sterling Tech with a rejection letter, ready to give up. Catherine Reed had run after him, refusing to let that be the ending. Together, they had written a different story, about second chances, earned success, and the transformative power of seeing potential in unexpected places. It was not the story Raymond had imagined for his life. It was better.